Hello, Thought Roomies, and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Hallie Rose. I'm so happy that you're here today. Thank you so much for being with me. I cherish you. I cherish the way that you are showing up for the work that you're doing on yourself, for your desire to grow, to the dedication you're putting into your dreams and the things that you are creating in your life. You being here right now, listening to this, means you're a person who cares about expansion, who cares about seeing the world become a better place. And I am celebrating you. Thank you so much. I see you. I'm glad you're here. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to sit down with my guest this week, Luke Fontaine. The impulse to interview Luke was really spontaneous because I flew to visit his beloved Elise Parker, who is actually the last guest on this show. And hopefully, if you missed that episode, you definitely want to go back and listen to it. It was an excellent one. And so while I was meeting with Elise, I just got the opportunity to get to know Luke, and his heart is as wide as the sea. He's a wonderful human being. He's highly creative, articulate, very fashionable, stylish, and just an all-around amazing human being. And it's been such a joy to get to know him and witness his light. The more that we got to chat, it was so clear to me how he's an absolute business maverick. I've never seen anybody so strong in this space as Luke is. And he's such a natural. He's had a variety of different gigs. He's worked as a marketing consultant, growth and operations strategist, financial architect to entrepreneurs. He's a business owner. He's a recording artist. And he's advised more than 100 companies, ranging everywhere from six-figure solo ventures all the way up to nine-figure giants. He also currently serves as a co-founder and COO of Online Coach Academy and has helped the company quickly ascend to the seven-figure business mark. He is so knowledgeable. So if you're an entrepreneur, this one is not to be missed. In this week's episode, Luke shares his advice for starting a business along with tips for success. He talks about how to find our why, and he emphasizes the importance of rest and reflection for any successful business ventures, even when that might feel counterintuitive. He also shares his views on failure and even tells a fun story about how he found an incredible synchronicity. I loved this story in Iceland. I was blown away by how different our gifts are and how much we could learn from each other through this conversation. So if you are currently feeling called to start a business yourself, or you know someone who's in the process of starting a business, I really want to encourage you to share this episode with them, with a friend, with a partner. Lean into the curiosity and work through some of the exercises Luke suggests for finding your why. So without further ado, my friends and fellow entrepreneurs and creatives and human beings who are currently awakening to all the glory that they have to offer this planet, let's step into the thought room with Luke Fontaine. Luke Fontaine, welcome to the Thought Room. I'm so happy that this happened. Thank you for agreeing to sit down with me today.
Of course.
So we're in San Diego, California, and I was actually here to interview your beloved Elise, which you helped us set up for that interview yesterday. It was fantastic. She knocked it out of the park. So anybody listening to this should definitely go back and check out my interview with Elise. But afterward, I was talking to you about a couple things business related, and you were an absolute mage, like a business fucking wizard. And my jaw quite literally dropped, and I was just like, dude, like you, in just a couple of minutes, you completely flipped some stories I had about what was going on in my business on its head. And that, to me, is the signature of a leader. Like, it doesn't take you long. And I know you were even talking to me this morning about all the different plates you spin and all the different companies you have, how Mondays are very busy for you. And you talked about having your team huddle, and you're like, yeah, it's this and it's that. And then I take all the problems that are going on in the business, and we have 30 minutes to go over the problems and make the plan for the week. And I was like, damn, like how long did it take you to get to the point where you could keep all of that in a 30-minute container? Like that's a powerful skill.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I would like to say that everything gets solved in 30 minutes, but it's never the case. And yeah, it's just taken a lot of time, a lot of, I don't like the word mistakes, but it's the closest word I can think of just like navigating, stubbing your toe and just like learning, being like, oh, okay, this is what happens in these situations. And then enough compounding time leaves you, just with the result of efficiency. And then within there, being able to solve things and move through it without being a bottleneck.
You were reflecting right before we hit record on this process of looking back at what we've done maybe 5 years ago in business, and how we can kind of like endearingly laugh at all the mistakes that we've made and how far we've come. And I kind of want to start here, which is wherever it feels natural in your heart. Will you tell us about your journey, both personally and in business? Like, what's your story? How did you end up here running all these businesses, helping all these other people run businesses? I'm so curious to hear about the genesis of this story from your perspective.
One word, just curiosity. We'll go a little bit deeper, but as far as the story, I've never had to like lay it out. And again, I'm not really that great of a marketer, but sort of just looking at my like timeline, and I would say it all started with being a musician. And that was like sort of the first step into entrepreneurship. You can create a product, the music, you can market it, get it out, get people to the show, you got to charge for it. And and that was like the first step into it.
How old were you when you started really diving into music at that capacity?
Probably about this tall.
Okay, so for anyone who's not watching this on video, you're like
10? No. Well, not as a business. So like I grew up with a bluegrass driven family. My dad's a guitar player, singer. And so as a kid, every Sunday, he would have band practice and have live gigs.
Where were you born?
South of Boston, little town called Duxbury.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And so he's like, he's a cowboy at heart, my dad.
Yeah.
I love him. But yeah, so he would play music, and I have a brother as well. And we would grow up just like watching him play music. And we were just like, oh, we want to do this. So we just started playing as well. I started playing upright bass and singing. My brother started playing guitar.
Yeah.
And just like learning the first song, which was like Danny Go to Maine. Funniest, weirdest song. But, and like doing that and finally just like building it really around a passion. And then being like, oh, wait, there was an aha moment of my dad would be playing a show out and we would open for him. And the people would be clapping louder for us. It was a certain point where we got to.
Right.
And then my dad's like, you guys just need to start playing your own shows.
Right.
And I was
How old were you at that point, do you think?
Yeah. One thing when it comes to my memory, some people say, and I've done some readings, says my memory is perfect.
Yeah.
But it's so hard to like look back.
Yeah.
I would like to say 14.
Yeah. So you were a teenager.
Yeah.
So you're still relatively young.
Yeah.
And you've got these giant like crowds of people clapping for you.
Yeah, like 30 old women in wheelchairs.
Okay, well, giant. To a 14-year-old, that probably feels like a lot. I mean, there's some people that have never been on stage or performed in front of a room or spoken in front of a room of 30 people their whole lives. So that's a big thing. So then what happened? You're realizing you love this.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess getting like people use the word scale. So it's like, oh, how can we scale this? At the time, it was like, hey, how can we do this full time?
Uh-huh.
And so we grew that from 14, 15, all the way till 18,
Mhm.
signing a record deal. And then,
You signed a record deal at 18.
yeah,
Tell me about that experience. That had to
oh,
be exciting.
super exciting. But this it definitely is an aid to my business experience, understanding contracts.
Mm.
And
Did you have some flub ups there?
oh, yeah,
Tell me about
yeah.
this.
Um, I guess at the time, and I won't say a name, but the guy who owned the record label at the time, really like amazing heart of a human, but also it was clear he was in a midlife crisis.
Mm.
So like I understand wanting to do that. And yeah, where it sort of came to was there was a lot of control on us.
Mm.
And like based on the contractual agreement, these things shouldn't be happening, but they are happening. And then it
Mhm.
was just like the awkward conversations of like, hey, you can't be doing this.
Right.
And yeah, when you have a guy, yeah, I just didn't, it's hard to really go into it deeply, but it's like one man who stood in a power and had no power,
Mm.
and us just trying to do our thing with control over it. And it really just got dark really quickly.
Oh, that's a bad feeling.
Yeah.
So, how'd you get out of that scenario?
I will shout out a friend, Gustavo. And so it was a friend of my father's. He's a very successful Brazilian businessman.
Uh-huh.
And we were going through all that. And at the time, I couldn't afford attorneys, didn't know who to turn to. And I spoke with Gustavo, and literally, it's sort of like the angel moment. He was just like,
Mm.
hey, you know, Dwayne Morris? I'm like, no. He's like, they're a great law firm. He's like, I'm going to get you Mark Fisher, who
Mm.
Mark's now passed away, but he represented Jay-Z, Beyonce, like
Mm.
some really huge names.
Mm.
And within a week, got us out of it.
Wow.
And so that was sort of the point of getting, it was just like luck of meeting some guy who was willing to help. And that was just really, yeah, became really light after that point.
Wow. So, first of all, thank you for sharing. That sounds like a really harrowing experience to have super young and very confusing. And for me, I can envision if that happened to me, it would leave a bad taste in my mouth about
Yeah.
the industry and kind of like, you're so hopeful when you're young and you're
Mm.
innocent. You're like, wow, my dream is really happening and I have this record deal, right?
Yeah,
And
right.
then this thing comes in that makes it so heavy and
Mhm.
tarnished. But I just heard you say things got really light after that.
Yeah.
So tell me what happened.
Yeah. Well, one more thing to add into that situation was like the learning part of it is like everyone at a certain level, if it sounds too good to be true, it's too good to be true.
Right.
And other people had certain motives. So like
Mhm.
that was my first point in life, realizing even if this was a vessel that I wanted, whoever's gifting you that vessel, there's an ulterior motive,
Mhm.
stature, whatever that was.
Right.
But post that experience, we just took back control. We had full freedom, and we just went back to gigging. What was it? NACA, National Association of Campus Activity. And it's basically this organization where you go to, you apply to get in.
Mhm.
If you get in, you get to go there and you have 15 minutes on stage in front of hundreds and hundreds of college reps that basically pick the talent for their school for that year.
Wow.
So we were going there, performing, booking out, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 college
Wow.
shows, and then being able to go play all those colleges. And
Fun.
yeah, and there was anybody who's a musician out there looking for like, I guess stable cash. Like NACA is amazing in how they support the arts because like the average show, the college has a huge budget. You'll get paid 5, 6, 7, 10, 20 grand to play
Wow.
a show where
Wow.
you were playing a college bar for like $200 that night.
Wow. Wow. Excellent.
Yeah.
Cool. So it sounds like the earlier part of your life was very heavily music centric. I know you still create and
Yeah.
produce. But when did this business aspect come in as another love in your life?
Yeah. Well, it was I'd moved to Nashville and was really just sort of sinking into the reality. Or it was actually my dad had come to Nashville and introduced me to his one of his old friends. And he's a guy who has a ton of hit songs with like Randy Travis, like some huge names out there. And the reality of the fact, and I love him, but he was detailing cars at the airport.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, so this is a reality. that even things can work out and get really, and you can make it at a certain period, but the end goal is
Right.
that.
Yeah.
And I think that was like my biggest shocking factor, being like, on a risk scale, that's not worth it.
Right.
So I turned music more into a passion. And then it was through a friend. I heard about a friend in New York starting a digital agency. And I got involved just literally on the ground floor with the first few people in the company and started building out a digital agency where we sold, like, basically it was Upwork, but way more qualified. And we do anything as long as it's legal, in quotations.
That was the little tagline. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so really started that from the ground floor with, I don't know, the first 20, 30 clients. And then we grew that up to 300 plus clients over 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And I guess the story, just learning in being in the ground floor, I had no experience, but I was willing to learn from the clients. We had some amazing clients. Luke's story was a client,
Oh,
funny enough.
sweet. Shout
Yeah.
out to Luke.
Yeah.
Love you, Luke.
And so I got introduced to a lot of those conscious coaching people. Jay Abraham, the Abraham Group, and just got to work within the organizations, understanding that, and then moving more internal to building the business. And so that was like my first taste of business, and then getting to work in just so many different industries, where it was like that knowledge of all those, I was able to replicate that for like a real estate company and being like, oh, okay, now would this work over here at the marketing company?
Right. And did you find that most things were transferable from one organization to the next?
Not exactly, but within theory. And that was like really cool to be able to start seeing, like, because like one way like the financial industry gets new clients is they send out a bunch of postcards and they try to invite you to a dinner and
Right.
doing this. And you're like, oh, wait, what's this ad agency doing? What I just build for them? Let's try this over here. No one's doing it. Holy crap, it works.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. So just, it sounds like you just had this knack for innovation too from the beginning.
Yeah.
You at this point have started how many different ventures, would you say? Or ballpark?
When we say start, do we mean an official filed LLC or collected revenue?
See, you're getting more technical with it than I would have, but because I think you said something to me yesterday, like, well, this is like my 12th business and like second, what I would call highly successful or something of that, and so I was like, wow, I want to ask you questions about that, like starting things and pivoting and maybe failing, and like, what is a failure and how do we deal with all that in entrepreneurship?
Ooh, yeah. I'm going to pin dealing with failure. And then as far as like the businesses, yeah, there's probably, I'd have to like go back through the notes and like really think, but I know there's at least 20 companies that have come to life and like moving forward to, like, it could be a thing that I would say 15 roughly I've just burnt. And that's just with testing and trying to figure out and making sure it aligns with what you want as well as a human. And that's sometimes tricky to figure out unless you get into it.
So were you saying 20 were kind of worked and then another 15 that burnt?
No. 20 that I got launched and into the ether, and this is a thing. We got the team, we got the people.
Okay.
And out of those 20, probably 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that needs to be said. And like, thank you for saying that, because I feel like so many people who are starting their own business think that they're just going to knock it out of the park, or that's the hope, that they're going to knock it out of the park on the first shot. And the reality is that, how old are you again? Do you mind me asking?
I think 28.
You think 28?
Yeah. I'm 27 or 28. Yeah.
Okay. We'll talk about maybe later why you don't know how old you are, but that's another issue. But okay, we'll say you're 28 and you've started 20 things. Like that's incredible. And I think that bravery to start a new thing and to be willing to learn and not really sure if it's going to work out is what has put you in the seat that I think that you're currently sitting in. So so going back to failure.
Yeah. Thoughts around failure. Failure is success. That's like the shortest thing for me. There's a lesson. Well, it defines how you see failure. And that's the thing. It's like, are you still breathing?
Mm,
Do you have a roof over your head?
right.
Are you able to feed yourself?
Mm,
How have you failed?
mm,
Do you still have infinite opportunity and options to explore? If anybody has internet access, they do.
mm, mhm.
So I guess for me, like with failure, yeah, sure, it really hurts when like regardless of the industry, but whatever thing you wanted to land, whether it was a partnership or sell a coaching package or a new agency partner, and it doesn't work out, you didn't fail, but
Right.
what did you learn from it?
Right. Right. Yeah. It sounds like in your mind, what I'm hearing is that like failure, there really isn't such a thing as failure. It's just all a learning. And I'm thinking about some people would be like, well, failing to me is not getting what I want. So, like, I said a thing, I didn't get what I want. So, therefore, I failed at obtaining that specific thing. And the Buddhists would say,
This
um,
is great.
yeah, that's like attachment. And the
Yeah,
attachment to it is what causes the internal suffering,
yeah.
right? So, how have you managed to apply a mindset where you can kind of have that sense of things flowing through you and not attaching so deeply?
Because no one knows what they want.
Go on.
Well, at points in like what I've noticed as a theme, and I would assume this is reflective with other people.
Hmm.
Probably the majority of people is like you think it could be, hey, I want the first 3 clients. No, you didn't want the clients. What did you really want? You wanted
Right.
security.
Right.
Oh, or you wanted a little like financial freedom over something else. There's always underlying like needs, but we
Totally.
fixate on like the vanity metrics, the first $1 million, the first
Yes.
I want the car. Oh no, what is that? Oh, that's ego. Oh,
Hmm.
that's status.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like if we're looking at like failure and success on a plane of like you're setting that benchmark, I don't think the majority of people set the right benchmark.
Hell yeah.
And so that's the thing I get clear on is so whenever anybody says, "Oh my God, I failed," no, you didn't.
Hmm.
There's no way.
Hmm.
There's no way you can fail.
I love that. And exactly what you said is one thing that I do with every single um, new client that gets on the phone with me. I go, okay, well, what are you working on? Like, what do you want more than anything
Yeah,
in the world? And then they'll tell me. And often it is something like that. It's like, oh, well, I want to make 6 figures
yeah,
this year. And I'll be like, cool. Why?
yeah,
Well, because I want to be able to buy whatever I want. Cool. Why?
yeah.
And it's like, oh, cause like, and people realize in the process that they exactly what you said, they don't really know
Mhm.
what they want. So I'm curious for you. Yeah.
And then I just had a little connection point, and that's where I get curious about business
Uh-huh.
because when you can really understand the why of what you want, the business that you think that you could be building is not the right vessel to get there.
Mm.
Did that land?
Yeah. And I want to ask about how does an entrepreneur or somebody who wants to create a business who may think they're clear on their why,
Mhm.
what exercise can you give us right now or questions can you walk us through to get very clear on that big why of why we're doing something?
Mm. So offhand, what initially comes to mind, my financial group. So something I'm new venture, new business, but my partner in that, Ryan, leads a perfect day practice
Mm,
where it's like a total. I can't do it, but what I remember of this is like you sit there and you close your eyes, you meditate, and you understand what your perfect day looks like.
mm,
Meaning you have infinite amount of money, you have infinite amount of friends, connection, everything is there in your life. And now let's write out and understand what that perfect day that could be on loop
mm,
would be.
mhm,
And then getting really clear on that. And to me, that's my why. That's what
mhm.
I'm looking to achieve. That could be me gardening in a ranch I have out in, I don't know, the Midwest.
Right.
Or it could be being on a yacht. It could
Mhm.
be numerous things, but getting clear on that and whatever factors, whether it's the community in that, if it's experience, what those pieces are.
Mm,
And all I can speak to is like that practice for me is what gets me really clear on
yeah.
like the why. And so like if a new business is coming, oh wow, that's going to take 30 hours out of my week. on top of top of where I'm at. Well, that's not going to help my perfect day.
Mm, I love that. I think that's a great invitation to anyone. I mean, I've been doing that in some form for years.
Yeah.
And it's some people will call it like manifestation or programming your reality or whatever words you want to put on it. But that clarity
Mhm.
is absolutely crucial in building what we want. So, and I think even more than just, again, I'm thinking of the vanity metrics, and what I hear about the perfect day is we're actually designing our lifestyle in connection with the embodied
Mhm.
feelings and relationships
Yeah.
that we want to feel. In no one's vision are they just, well, maybe they are, but like counting, like, okay, you made $100,000, like like you're spending the whole day counting that money. No, like $100,000 is a concept.
Mhm.
$1 million is a concept. But why? It's like, what is the feeling? I think even more so than anything, if you can get in touch with the feeling that you
Mm.
want to feel, that's where the gold is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to know, on that, it's like there's feelings underneath that. What feeling comes up for you when you see $1 million of cash on the table?
Yeah.
What's that feeling?
Yeah. I think it's when I think about that, it's this feeling of freedom,
Mm.
right? So when I was living in New York City and building my startup, and I barely had money to eat some weeks. I qualified for just food stamps. I was like in a rent controlled apartment and like barely able to make that rent. And I would meditate every day. And what I would meditate on, and sounds funny now, but at the time, this was a dream. And it was actually a dream that felt somewhat attainable. And I say that because I think that's important. Sometimes we can actually undercut ourselves if we set the bar too high and then we feel like we're actually mentally, we're like, I'm never going to get there.
Mhm.
That's not helpful. So, this meditation that I had was a vision on loop every day. I did it for like 30 or 40 days of me picturing throwing my credit card down at the lunch table and just paying for my friends and them saying, thank you so much. Wow, thank you for treating me. And I would just picture me smiling at them smiling at me, and feeling that energetic reciprocity of like, no problem. And that throwing my credit card down, jumping on planes last minute to go visit friends or go on trips anywhere that I wanted. And I just held that vision
Mhm.
always with that feeling so clear until it came into my life.
Yeah, that's where I'm getting curious now because I'm like, that's an interesting sort of like launch and arrival moment. It's like there's that feeling, I see that, and then once you're there,
Mm-hmm.
it, me personally, it dissipates,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm.
fizzles out.
Mm.
And I don't want to sound ungrateful because I'm
Mm.
very blessed for everything I have in this life and the people, but it's just interesting how quickly that disappears.
Mm. That's really interesting. And I think it can, if we're not in touch with, like, again, why did I want that? I
Mm.
wanted that to feel connected. I wanted that to feel like I could give back to some of the people that I
Yeah.
love that have given me so much. If I was doing it to look cool in a credit card roulette or whatever, then of
Those never end well.
course, of course, when I achieve that, then it wouldn't be satisfying. So it's like that's where we get into the situation of chasing the next thing and the
Mhm.
next thing and never being satisfied. So I think the whole trick for me, why bother feeling the feeling inside of your body before you have it? That's exactly why. It's
Mm.
like um that's the training. It's the inner gym, and practicing the feeling inside your body before you have it, you technically have it.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, oh wait, I'm training in happiness before I have the thing that I think is going to make me happy. Well, we've just skipped a lot of steps, and now
Yeah.
I'm living life from this place of joy and empowerment now. I don't have to wait for that.
So you're really great at these things. I'm just over here listening. Just like,
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
but Luke, this is why I like you so much, because we have such different skill
Yeah.
sets and gifts. And so I really want to amplify yours right now. You were saying some things yesterday that I was like, this is a perfect soundbite.
Oh, cool.
And so maybe a question I could ask you, to kind of showcase you is if there is somebody listening to this right now who wants to start a business, but they're feeling overwhelmed, they're maybe scared of failure, and we have you here to offer us your top tips, whether it's 3 or 5 tips for new entrepreneurs or people who want to start a business. What are things you learned from your world of mistakes that could help someone out who wants to start right now? What would you say?
Oh, that's a great question. Um, like diving into it at the highest level, if you are there to like, you have to check in with yourself. And it like, why are you getting into business is like the biggest thing to really sit with and understand. And what I mean by that is like, I've seen people who have decided, oh, I'm going to build an agency. And they were just doing it to make the quick buck and make money. You're just going to piss off a lot of people and not really deliver a great result.
Mm.
So like really checking in with yourself if like you are really fully committed to delivering the best experience to whoever is consuming your service, product, whatever it is. And if that's there, you can't go wrong.
Mm.
And what that can look like versus, well, it's just coaching is always the theme in this area in San Diego. But like with coaching, it's like, you shouldn't, I know there's a lot that can come up with like charging and charging what you're worth. And there can be guilt and shame around that. But even if you do it, say it's $2,000 for 60 days of support with your gut health, and you get halfway through or at the end and you really couldn't deliver, give the money back. Don't plan to use that. Just like play in this and explore, but don't be self-serve, or I guess it's self-serving to like, oh, I'm going to utilize this now and like get things. It's like, no. Hey, you're in testing phase. And that's where I've seen a lot of people go wrong, which then makes them feel really guilty because they're like, crap, I don't have any more money to give back to them. What do I do? And then that really like stunts their growth there. So I guess like an overall theme of that is just like really be connected to the outcome and really be in service to someone.
Yeah.
And yeah, don't spend all the money they give you.
Yeah. Like be in integrity.
Yes, exactly.
Be in integrity. Yeah, that's beautiful. So
I can keep going.
Yeah, keep going, please.
The second part of it would be, everything is accessible online, and you'd be surprised how willing people are just to talk about their experience in something. So if you're looking to build an e-commerce store, like my mom taught me this, like when she thought I was going to go to college and be a doctor or a lawyer, she'd be like, go to LinkedIn, find that guy, see what he's done, look at his track record, reach out to him, ask him for some time. And even those people were giving me time to chat about their experience. And people are really easily accessible, especially if you show up with like appreciation and being like, wow, I'm really impressed with where you've built company X to. I would love to have 5 minutes of time just to learn a couple things from you. And from those conversations, that can catapult your growth.
Completely. And I would even add to that, like I like what you said about the appreciation, but keep in mind, and I'm saying this to anyone listening, keep in mind that the people who you look up to, right, have over time created this life by probably putting a lot of energetic boundaries around where they're going to spend their finite time and energy. So there's absolutely a way to access these people, but get clear on your energy first, because you're not the only one reaching out to them. And what's going to differentiate you from all the other people reaching out is don't come with that neediness, right? And kind of this mood of, if this person has impacted you in the way that you're saying they are, offer that energy back to them. Maybe ask them what you can do for them to support them first before you ask for anything. Because people are asking them for stuff all day long.
And I would love to add to that. When I think about like the people that have like, when I think of Jay Abraham, he and his team, Michelle, have given so much to me. And it's like, when I first started getting going with them, I would just give, get no expectation, give. And it's just like, it's like a little Willy Wonka ticket or something. It's just like, I'm just putting these, they're going to stack up and they're going to be thinking Luke.
Right.
And at some point, I'll be able to request and ask.
Mhm.
Not that that's manipulative, but it was my way of like, I genuinely just wanted to give to learn. And then when I realized came out of that was like, when I wanted to ask, it was a no brainer.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll make
Yeah.
that happen. How does July look?
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, wow. And then compounding, that's how I looked at every relationship.
Mm.
And it's just like, if you, in the absence of value, price doesn't matter. I know it's a really random quote, but like, that's something I really learned from that whole experience is like, if I just kept giving value, it doesn't matter. Even if I wanted to charge or get something that cost like any monetary value, didn't matter.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, definitely. Cool. So leading with appreciation, asking what you can offer, finding mentors,
Mhm.
finding community too. I don't
Mm.
know if you feel that way too, but when I was starting my first business, Lunar Wild, it was like, okay, I'm starting this first period box. That's pretty nichey. Where are the people who are talking about menstrual periods? And then
Mhm.
I just started to follow accounts online and was like, oh, this is cool. And these are this, and finding women's empowerment stuff and going down this fun rabbit hole of finding community. If you can find your people online, ooh,
Yeah.
it's beautiful. Someone asked me the other day, actually it was, we were having a gathering here and one of the young women who was here said, how do I find community like you or like people having
Austin,
these
Texas.
conversations? Yeah, well, that's where I live. But you know what I said to her is she goes, yeah, and like, how do I find community like the people that you're having on this podcast? And I said, go online to the Instagram for the Thought Room, look at the people who are following the Thought Room,
Mhm.
check their pages out, see if you want to connect with any of them online. Like, this is what's so cool about living in this day and age. We can find each other this way.
It's interesting you bring that up just because it's like in any entrepreneurial journey, you forget about like the starting point things
Mhm.
or not or the starting strategies, whatever we want to call them. And like, I remember I was probably 19 at the time and like doing the same thing, going to those people, going to their photos, looking at who's engaging. All right, those people like this, they'll like my service, like, engage, comment. Let me send them a message and just like
Right.
building community. And
Right.
now I'm just like, that's obsolete. But
Right.
that is such a great starting point for
It's such a
anyone.
great starting point, and to make sure you really love it.
Mm.
Like, if you're doing it and you're in these communities and you're like, I don't love this, this isn't me, then that's an indicator
Yeah.
too.
And that's another thing I would add to, you were talking about the journey of someone getting into business. And I believe her name's Sarah Evans. I met her a year ago. She said something that really stuck with me. And it was, a lot of people build businesses off of passion. And she and myself now fundamentally believe that you should never build a business off of passion.
Hmm.
And which is interesting because you think about, oh, why not? It gives me life, gives me force. But the definition of passion, do you know the well, it's an uncontrollable emotion.
Mm.
And it's like, do you ever want an uncontrollable emotion running a business?
Right. No.
And so passion should be like separated off into the bucket of like, I love live music. And at one point in time, I did have a business. I no longer have a business that does concerts and stuff, but separating that and just understanding that this business bucket is just a vessel to achieve your ideal day outcome and keep those passions clean and separate and sacred over here.
Mm. I love this. I want to go into this more because I feel that you have stuff to teach me in this area of, because I'm a deep feeler, very emotional. And sometimes that makes it difficult to run my business because I want my fingers on the pulse of every single thing that's happening with every single team member. And I like to be involved and it taxes me. So, how do we, I don't want to say compartmentalize our emotions because that sounds like we're just denying them, but you get where I'm going with this question. Like, how do we run a business without taking things so personally
Mm.
and start viewing things like just an offering and not a reflection directly of ourselves?
Yeah. Great question. You're great with the questions, man. Yeah, there's definitely a huge work of ego. Like when people build a business, it feels like it's me. And at some point down the line, there has to be a real check in, wake up call with ego and detaching that. And I just feel that's so important for just any growth of an organization. Because it's not you, you're a player within it. But ideally, and this is just my view, but like if you're a business owner, the point should be to be able to own a business, not have a business that owns you.
Mm,
And that's like the biggest thing. If it's tied around your ego, you're going to have to, that business is going to own you forever
mm,
versus being able to own that business.
mm,
And so when it comes down to team and like having a lot of them, I've worked with a lot of people that are very emotional, and emotion is an amazing power to be literally rocket fuel to any business. And it's really like one of the most underutilized powers,
mm,
but also it can be a double-edged sword. And
mm,
so keeping emotion in containers that allows it to thrive, content creation, marketing in a certain level, um, speaking, like those are great vessels for emotion.
mm,
And then in the other areas of business, you can still have emotion, but you can't make decisions based on emotion.
hmm,
And what I mean is you need to have some kind of, I just call them data points,
mhm,
whatever it is, to be able to just keep yourself in check.
mm,
It's that energy worker that you go, like, that
mhm,
people go and see. It's like that is your form of energy work, to be like, oh, okay, I feel really upset and about all this, and this person said this. But then you look at the success metrics of this vertical and you're like, but everything's good. Okay, it's my emotion. All right, I need to check in here. And
mm,
that's for me is just developing those KPIs, those metric points, to be able just to have that second person who's just like it's like when you're bowling, those bumper rails.
totally.
Yeah.
You gave me a great metaphor yesterday, which I would love for you to expand and expound on. We were talking about business and how some people get their goal in mind and
Mm.
they're really focused on this goal, and you likened it to setting sail on a ship.
Oh, yeah,
Do you
yeah.
remember this?
Yeah.
Will you recount that for me so I
Yeah.
can remember?
So I guess the version of it is people are so focused on the goal. So like Columbus sailing across the ocean and getting to land and just getting there so quick. And what we don't know is all the work that was being done to get there. If they were just focused on the outcome, they would have sunk, they would have landed off course, which actually think they did. But regardless, it's focusing on the actual ship and the vessel, which is the entity, the business,
Mm,
the people, all the things that make that vessel float.
mm,
Similar to the clapboards that are on the side of the ship, like as you're sailing those like old schooner boats, it's leaking.
mhm,
And so you have to constantly take time and pause and go, okay, cool. All right, let me check in. How are the sails doing? Are they trimmed right? Are they doing this? Like, let's just, I'm a sailor at heart, but like go up into irons, which for your sailors out there, you know what that is. Go up into the wind, you're pausing, you're luffing, and you're checking on the boat. And you're taking that time. So now you can keep going.
mm,
And that's to me how I always looked at business as well, and how people should really focus on their vessel and their people. Cause like one toxic person in an entity can just be a plague to the whole thing. And if you don't take that time to rest and reflect, you'll make those mistakes.
mhm. Yeah, and that's another thing you said to me. Thank you. That was a beautiful metaphor. You were like, you know what? One of the best uses of your time is to rest and
Hmm.
reflect on your business.
Yeah.
I love that permission. So rarely do people give each other that level of permission.
Yeah.
What what role has resting and reflecting played in your businesses?
Oh, I'm smiling real hard. So I have a habit of, yeah, in this current moment in season, there's a lot. I'm not able to rest right now, but I know it's so needed. And that's just my own growth pattern of understanding how much I'm needed. Um, but back to the point of like understanding that that's what's been able to decrease churn 20% in agencies, and like sitting back and pausing, going, all right, I'm not going to do anything, but let me figure out why clients are canceling.
Mm,
Let me just like feel for that client. Let me jump on a call with them. Oh, that's how they feel. Cool. I wonder how could we fix, and just like being curious. And that one rest season of like a week decrease churn in $1 million agency by 20%.
Right.
And I'm just like, wow, this is freaking important. And in every vertical of the business, you should be taking that time.
I started listening to Essentialism, the book, the audiobook on the plane over here. Have you read that one?
No.
It's excellent. We'll put it in the show notes. And he's giving a vignette of a corporation, and the founder would have the entire company come into work, but it's kind of like they were taking off the first Monday of every month, which is like, it wasn't like, okay, this is going to be a Friday when productivity is waning. It's like, no, we're going to have this first Monday of the month. And it's not like a typical meeting. It's like everybody come in and rest.
Interesting.
Yeah. And what he was observing too, he was using it as almost like a litmus test, because if there were people that were not able to come take the rest and have chill time and creation time too, that was a big piece. It's just time to innovate and be. Then he said, we're not doing something right. If people are too busy to come to this, then they're like trying to work through it, or we need to hire more team members. Something's going on here. And I loved that. I thought, wow, that, if every company operated that way, what a different world we'd have.
Yeah. There are quite a few that do. And I love that you shared that. And there's, well, her name's Erin. She lives in Nashville. She has an amazing, very huge company that does pest control. And something she's really focused on, and I've chatted with her about, is like turning the workday into a 4-day work week, and then restructuring people's roles just so that it allows for more rest and autonomy around that. And if you can figure out like the human needs of the people as well, just on this note, like this just drives me back to, it's like the most underutilized facet of any business, and I will swear every day, all day about this, is team. And it's like, if they need rest, give them rest. If they need different roles, give them that. And if you can figure out how to create a structure that is autonomous and flexible to do that, it's game over.
Excellent. Yeah, that's very helpful. I'm thinking about people who are listening to this who have always dreamed of starting their own business, but they've got another job, 9 to 5 or something like that. And they're hearing this, or they're knowing exactly the business that they would start. They've got their why, they're following along with us, but it feels impossible to leave their current job, or at least that's where the mindset is at. What would you say to them for first steps toward their dream?
First steps towards a dream. Well, you've already taken the first one. You're thinking about it. It's always a tricky thing, because it's like my where my mind goes. And I stutter sometimes when I'm just in deep thought, but where my mind goes is like the average person. There's a mindset around like, 30 to 40 hours in a work week, and that's all I have. So like, I can't take on something else. You have 80 hours a week in you. And so like, if that's something that you're in, you really just have to understand there's going to be this growth period just for a short period of time to be able to prove what you're looking to do, to allow you that seamless transition. And you could just up and leave your job today. And I fully support that, but stress comes along with that.
Right.
When's the next paycheck? What's this going to look like? So like, my advice on just taking that step is understand the compounding effect of, even if you can just put 30 minutes a day towards something, it's not going to happen next week, but it will happen in the future if you're consistent. So whatever consistency you can apply to whatever business you're looking to build, just be really honest and truthful to that. And that is what's going to change you from being an employee to a business owner.
What is the gnarliest, most difficult business learning via air quote mistake, or something maybe that felt like a mistake at the time, but what is the biggest, scariest, business lesson you've had to learn? And maybe there's a story around that particular time if
Well,
it comes to mind.
well, yeah. I would assume like people would like to hear about like the 6-figure lawsuits and all the things that like have gone on and like uh, honest, yeah, like just really crappy thing. Like I don't know if I can swear on this, but
Yeah, you can.
okay, really shitty things that like people do.
Yeah.
Like those are things I can talk about in every single company that's been built. But
Mm,
like for me, it's not really that big of a learning lesson because what I'd rather go to is like logically everything can look good. People are so unique. And that is my biggest learning piece is people. And just really trying to understand that this business has a ripple effect and it's going to create this as impact.
mm,
This person is just a passenger on this to help that rocket go up. And aligning that is really tricky. And I really do trust and love everyone that I get to work with and comes onto teams. But understanding there's always something underneath that they won't communicate. And that's been the hardest learning lesson for me. And I'm still learning that
mm,
is really understanding the human core, their essence, what really motivates and drives them before it becomes an issue.
mm,
Then the issue stuff, that's the vanity stuff. Oh, and this happens, that. And it's just, yeah. Does that make
mm.
sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Um, I'm thinking about the people listening to this podcast
Yeah.
who are starting a new business, and you've already given us some tips for that. But in your all the work that you've been doing and all the people that you've helped start their own businesses, you have a great deal of experience. What is the number one mistake that you see looping through a lot of the people that you work with that you're like, wow, if I could just drop this golden nugget somewhere public, like right
Mm,
here in the thought room, it would save a lot of people from getting in a lot of hot water?
yeah. Hmm. So a lot of people that I work with are like 7-figure business owners and just get out of your own way.
Mm. What does that mean to you?
Um, like uh, what I mean by that is just like there's a lot of people that get caught up in and there's a lot of people that do this great, but like from the conversations I have with someone pinging me on Instagram, that's where this is coming from and like having conversations. And I'm like, you are the bottleneck.
Mm.
As soon as you can step outside of that, it's just like a channel. Things start moving more clearly.
Right.
And so I guess that's my advice to that caliber of person that I'm just chatting with is just like you really like the sooner you can detach yourself from everything that's going on, the more you get to live life, the more you get to have fun, play, connect, and do those pieces.
That transition is a difficult one
Hmm.
because you think about it, if the fire inside of someone is what elicited the genesis of the business in the first place. It's like this love for this thing. Like you said it before, this is my baby.
Yeah.
And then because they're in integrity, they're in alignment, things grow, they build a team around them. And then at a certain point, it's like, now you have to get out of the way.
Hmm.
Now you have to let go. Well, I can't let go. I've been controlling this the whole time and,
Yeah.
tweaking all these tiny little things. How do we let go of control when we just feel like we're gripping so tightly onto the details?
Yeah. I would just look back at Mother Nature and how a mother brings a beautiful baby into this world. And there is a certain point of time where your duties are to care and have your hands over everything. God forbid Timothy falls down and whacks his head, and yeah, you got to be there. But just like a business, there's a consciousness to it where at a certain level, that consciousness can take over.
Mm,
And yeah, that's
cool.
just like how I view that. And it's just like understanding those stages of the business.
Right. Like, that's the kinda uncomfortable like, they get to your business gets to the adolescent phase,
Yeah.
and it's pushing back at you because it needs a little freedom,
Yeah.
right? And you're
No,
like
come
you're
closer.
being the helicopter parent, and when I'm saying you, I feel like I'm talking to myself right now,
Yeah.
like, this is definitely what's been happening as we grow the thought room and relaxing into trusting that it has its own soul.
Mhm.
It has its own impulse. This thing, this entity is growing and moving and changing and it has its own dreams.
Yeah.
And it's not about me. It's about the messages and it's about the team and the energy and
Mhm.
everything. And just letting go to that is actually a lot more difficult than it
It
sounds.
it is, but, like, when you think about that, you go down, like, the rabbit hole of, like, "Okay, so what's the worst thing that could happen?" Uh, uh, like, this thing could not be released on time, and so what happens if it gets released the next day? So it's like, now what's the probability of that actually happening?
Right.
3%?
Right.
Okay, so now out of the 100 times I think about this and I'm involved, that type of freedom is worth the 3 times it bugs up, and when it bugs up, still not even that bad. We just drop it the next day.
Right. Yes.
And
Yeah.
I give myself permission to feel and think that way.
Mhm.
It's
Wow.
we're the only people that put the constructs on it has to be like this, and if it's not, it's the worst thing
Right.
in the world.
Right. And we were going through this for a while too because we hired someone and they were like, you should be releasing weekly. And I for a while it was like we were trying to grind out these episodes
Mm,
more quickly than felt natural for me.
yeah.
It's not that we couldn't do it. It was that sometimes we run 2-hour interviews
Yeah,
and we drop in really deep and they're juicy and it's longer format. And that's just the soul that our
yeah,
show has.
I
I
know.
was trying to fit it into being something else, right?
Was this a consultant or like a coach?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My question would be like, "Hey, Tina, so how do you suggest we do that without losing the integrity of what the show is?
Right.
Are we backlogging this? Are we going to do a hiatus and a pause?
Right. Yeah.
What's going to happen?"
Yeah. Yeah. Really, really great questions. So switching gears a little bit,
Yeah.
just we were having a conversation in the car the other day as we were driving to dinner and we were kind of talking about like writing books and this hope that someday you'd write a book. But in that playful conversation, like
Yeah.
you have some really fascinating life stories and like peak moments beyond business. Like you've traveled all over the world. You've had fascinating conversations with interesting people and I wondered if you might reflect now for just a moment on if you were writing a book, which you are someday. Yes.
Yes.
And I'm going to get one of the first copies and we'll have you back on the show. Um, so in that book, what would be one of the absolute must include stories from your epic life thus far?
Oh.
And we can really slow it down and you can take us through the detail and the playfulness of that
Oh.
conversation.
Yeah. Um. Hmm. I'm debating the Iceland story.
Why are you debating?
Well, because I'm like wondering like how out there I really want to go.
That's up to you. You would be shocked at what the listeners of this show have heard. So, but it's totally for you to check in with your heart.
Yeah. My heart wants to tell the Iceland one in more detail because for me it was so playful and fun and just ludicrous of just like yeah, of an event.
Sweet. So once upon a time.
Once upon a time, not too long ago, about probably 5 years, um, my friend approached me with going to Iceland, and so yeah, we decided to go to Iceland and rent it was one of those Land Rover Defenders. And it's like those really rugged cars that everyone wants the Instagram photos with. And we decided basically the whole plan of the trip was to get in this thing and do like the Golden Circle, which is like driving all the way around Iceland. And it seemed great in theory until we landed there. And that was really the whole plan of the trip. We had nothing really else besides like some sights we want to see. And we land there at the airport and what was it? Yeah, the Defender is right out front. I grew up driving like a stick shift truck in the hay bale fields when I was a kid. So like I remembered a little bit of that, but we get to the car and it's a nice car. It's older, but it's like you don't want to mess it up. And it's a standard. And I'm not feeling too comfortable. And also we just had this flight. We haven't slept. It was in the summer. So Iceland's going through the summer solstice, which basically means, don't quote me on it, but I think it's like 23 and a half hours of daylight per day. And so it just feels really weird. So we get there, we get in this car, and it is, uh, I wish I could go back in time and be on the street watching me do this because it was just so funny. These two kids just getting into this car and just like putting it into first gear, revving up. Gung, 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 gung. Okay, all right, all right. We just went like a foot. And then the guy who's renting it to us, he's like, "You know how to drive this, right? That's required." Yeah, 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 yeah. We're fine. We're fine. And I stalled like probably 10 more times. He's like, you're gonna break them. No, no, it's fine. And finally got it going.
Oh my God.
And then just realized we just have to keep it moving. Because like if we stop it, we're gonna have to go through this whole gug 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 phase. Whatever that is, we're gonna have to keep doing this. And so yeah, so then we just started like adventuring. And first day we ended up God knows where, but no cell phone service, some little house out on this like cliff. And this woman was serving like coffee. And it was so fun. But where it started getting interesting was we decided to go back to Reykjavik. Uh, and meanwhile, this is probably 3 days later. I've slept probably 4 hours because we're sleeping in the back of a Defender. Um, and it's really, really cold at night. And it's really not comfortable. And so getting a little bit delusional, and we're in Reykjavik and we want to shoot this hyperlapse, which is like where you hold the camera and you take one photo, take a step, take a photo, and then in post you edit it all. So it's like, do you know those type of
Yeah,
things?
totally. Almost like a digital flip book.
Yeah. And so that process takes like 2 hours. And so my friend I was with was there doing that, and he's just taking one step. And I'm just like looking around. And then look at this family walking up to me. And from having a music background, I was just like, that looks like Dave Grohl. And Dave Grohl's, he's the lead singer of the Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
I'm like, "Dave, what's up?" And then go ahead.
What? No, this is
Oh.
in the middle of. Are you in like rural Iceland or
No,
you're in the
this is
city?
in the city of Reykjavik.
Okay.
There's this big church tower and this like
Okay.
main street that comes down, and he's with his wife.
Does he live there or was he vacationing?
Well, so we're gonna get there.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And so he's there with his wife and his two daughters, I believe, and I think they had like bright pink hair. And Hunter just kept going and taking photos. And then I connected with him, and he was headlining the music festival there. No, that's what's called the summer solstice. Yeah, there's a festival there called like the summer solstice. If you have the time, really cool thing because it's just like daylight all around. There's just always music going.
Wow.
So connected with him, I was able to swindle backstage passes. And all of a sudden that night we're off to this solstice event.
Wow.
And yeah, just getting to go backstage, hang out with all the people. And then it's the synchronicities, which is really funny. So in this trip, when I was in Boston, I was in a touring band. And there's an artist called Younger. His name's Dario. And he's like the best looper guy in the world. And he's from the UK. And I saw him in Boston. I became friends with him and his girlfriend at the time, or fiance possibly. And I stayed in touch. He was playing that show. So I was like, oh my God, got to connect with him. And I'm going a little bit all over the place, but like all of a sudden it's like 3 a.m. It's bright daylight. It is downpouring rain. And it's me, my buddy, and like 40 other people, and Younger is performing on this stage and like all the gears breaking and stuff, but it's like still really worth it. And that night we end up playing football or soccer in this ice rink with Younger and all the people until like 6 a.m. With bottles of wine and just playing soccer and all these bandmates. And it was just like again, remember I'm off like 4 hours of sleep. Right. So I'm like hallucinating.
Right.
And it was just such a cool experience. And then also we bumped into David Wolf. at a restaurant while we were there. Another friend of mine, Chris Stoikos' business partner, was also there, and we bumped into him. And it was just like this one trip, 1 week, no plans, like the synchronicities of just like 6 to 8 people getting to go backstage, see the Foo Fighters. And it was just pretty wild.
Wow.
Hope-
What an exciting trip. Like I can feel that even in just remembering that trip. There's so much joy and excitement in that.
yeah,
And
it was kid like.
kid like,
Yeah.
beautiful. Isn't that the way that we, desire to live life? It certainly is for me. It's like kids don't get stuck in things the way that adults do. They live for what they want to do. And you mentioned in that story several times synchronicity.
Mm.
And I would love to hear your personal philosophy. Obviously, there's no right or wrong answer on this, but what do you think synchronicity really is?
Again, with the great questions. So, synchronicity to me is similar to how I experience deja vu, where a moment in time will happen and there'll be a sensation or feeling where you're just like, whoa, been here before. I've seen this, or I've future casted this.
Mhm.
This is really interesting. And with the synchronicities of that experience, I just felt all those people. There's synergies between Dave Grohl being a musician, his journey, and myself. With younger as well, and seeing Chris's business partner, I'm just like, we were all meant to be there at the same. Like, think about just planet Earth, and out of all places you can go and do,
Totally.
and I'm just like, it's just a little weird when I think
Sure.
about that. And for sure, I could have went to Thailand and had a different experience, but similar. But just those people and the energy there, and then also that catapulted some stuff in business for me as well. So it was just like, I felt like everyone was supposed to be there doing their things, and everyone's story was like really random too. I
Mhm.
believe Dave didn't have that plan for the tour, but it came through last minute. Similar with Chris's business partner, he was literally just going through Europe and just jumped on a last minute flight to check out Iceland. And it was just like we all just ended up there and just like randomly crossing paths.
I love that. Yeah, I agree with you. There's definitely this ephemeral quality to synchronicity that does remind one of deja vu. It's like,
Mm.
I don't know what your personal belief systems are, but for me, it's in those synchronistic moments that I'm reminded that I'm living on this rock that's spiraling around in the cosmos.
Yeah.
And I'm like this tiny,
Yeah.
tiny little thing. And there's just so much more chaotic organization
Mm.
to the whole thing than I can ever possibly conceptualize. And it's humbling.
Yeah. Well, the chaos, that was something that's, and I love where we're taking this, but it's our friend Nathaniel who's staying here.
Mhm.
He brought this up yesterday, and I will probably change it a little bit, but he was just talking about like how the sun comes up and comes down. What were the other examples? There's a few things that just like always happen in life,
Mhm.
just every single day. Like
Mhm.
the easiest thing is the sun coming up and down. The air on the earth, it
Yeah.
stays packed right in here and doesn't go anywhere.
Right. Gravity,
Yeah.
the floor supporting us.
Yeah. And it's like, why should, like, everything else is divinely in sync?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's like something you said just resonated that with me, and just being like
Yeah.
something to really tie back to is everything is just meant to be, and trust in the process of what it is. And it just divinely plays out. Once you go against that grain and ripple that path, things start getting pretty bad.
Mm. Yeah, I think he also said like, the sun is rising and setting and then your heart is just beating.
Hmm.
Like that's one of those things that's just happening and we don't have to think, okay, heart, beat,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
beat, lungs, breathe.
Breathe. Yeah.
It's just happening. And if we can widen our lens, widen our perspective to be like, my life is breathing. all the events in my life are twirling like those whirling dervishes,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just breathing and swelling and moving and growing and melting and freezing like the seasons. Like, I like how you said this current season in my life, and staying in this house with everybody here, I can
Mm.
hear that's part of the vernacular that you're all using is like, oh, well, in this season of business or in this
Yeah.
season of life. And I love that because it's so honoring to this concept of things are not always the same, nor should they be.
No.
And the more we can accept the cyclical nature
Mm.
of ourselves as cosmic beings in this dance, I think the resistance gets eased quite a bit.
Yeah. That felt good to hear.
It felt good to say.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. It's just like there is no. What I've realized, life is like the only constant personally where things can be so at flow and at peace. And in business, you really have to look at everything as seasons and taking the time to rest, figure out the next thing, and then make some shifts to make that next season a little more easy or flowy.
Mhm.
But it can't just be one. As soon as you've actually, this is a great tip. As soon as business just feels like one constant thing where it's like everything's an issue or even everything's perfect, stop what you're doing, take time to reflect.
Mm. It's almost like you intuited my next question, because I was going to say, when someone is so overwhelmed and it feels like their entire business is completely broken, like,
Mm.
I intuited that you would say the rest thing again, because I think that for so many people, it's like, oh, this isn't working. I have to stop this and I have to give up. But the invitation is to just take the discipline to carve out time to rest and frame it as a rest rather
Mhm.
than this is a failure or an ending.
Mhm.
Most people, and I'm including myself in this, when there's a problem and it doesn't feel like there's enough time, we'll work longer and harder to try and compensate. And then we
Mhm.
get to be in that state like you were when you were operating on no sleep and,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
Iceland.
Yeah.
And we're this zombified person with not running at full capacity, not feeling well, and trying to burn the candles at both ends. You can't be creative or innovative. It's like Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of
Mhm.
needs, the self-actualization being at the top and creativity being at the top, until those visceral needs at the bottom for security, safety, love, connection, and food and shelter,
Mm.
all of that, until those are met, and rest is included in that, you can't step into that space of
Yeah.
creation.
And then I would also like just to give the invitation to whenever you're in that place, for whatever reason, and I don't want to use the word victim, but I'm subject to this thought pattern as well,
Yes.
is, oh my God, I just can't take one day off. Like, oh, it's all gonna like it's just so bad. Where it's just like,
Yeah.
just do it. Like
Yeah.
you'll be surprised 2% of what you think was gonna happen is going to happen.
Mhm.
And it's really more of what's been built up in your mind around
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
And that one, even that just one day off to reflect can decrease the stress and improve the efficiency 50% in your
Right.
business.
Right. And to gamify it too, and to be like, okay, well, usually when there's other things people tell me I can't do in my life, I want to show them that they're wrong.
Yeah.
So if I'm telling myself I can't take a day off,
Prove yourself
well, it's
wrong.
like I can't jump out of that airplane or I can't bungee jump.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to be like, no, I'm going to do this. So although it might seem insignificant, this is just as important as a challenge as facing any other fear in your life. The
Mm.
fear of resting is really a fear that you're not going to be okay. Your
Mm.
business is not going to be okay. Everything's going to fall apart. And to really, punch yourself out of that trance by saying, this is a fear. This is a fear. And I'm going to face it.
Yeah. Well said.
Thank you. So, as we come to a close of this interview, I want to ask you if there's anything else when you're scanning your mind and you just drop into that's like wanting to come through right now for anybody who is wanting to start a business, and their business is focused on helping people, and they're wanting to step into service. Some would call it a light worker, some would call it a conscious business, but they're dealing with all of the things that come with that, including, guilt or
Yeah.
undervaluing oneself, whatever. What's coming up for you that you would like to share as we come to a close?
Mm. Well, you're doing like anybody who's in that thought pattern, and that's your choice in reality. Understand how much of a gift you are to the outcome you're looking to create. And even just those intentions and those thoughts you're putting out there, whether you've even taken the step, that's all that is the most important thing. Um, as far as the other things that come to mind are a little more lukey when I talk to business stuff, and it's more like processy system stuff, but like understand that, how do I say it? The process you follow or you're thinking to follow was built by the cheapest bidder and by someone else previously to where you are in this current reality. So question everything, and do things differently. Um, and then the last piece is everything, no matter how daunting or dark something can feel and like stuck, everything is figure outable.
Mm,
Because when your car gets fixed, it is you could figure it out. You bring it to someone else for them to figure it out. That then essentially means you could figure it out as well.
mm.
And it's the same thing with every part of your business. Even if you have no experience, you can figure it out. It's just a choice.
Mm, beautiful. Beautiful. So empowering. Yes. Thank you so much. Where can people find you online if they are interested in following you and want to connect with you? Maybe give us where we can find your music and any other fun places you want to plug us into.
Oh, cool. Well, I'm here in San Diego, so you guys can find me here. But as far as online, Instagram at Luke_Fontaine. I really think that's it. And I have a Spotify artist profile. It's Luke period. So Luke period. Um, and yeah, if you find me on Instagram, there should be links and stuff in there. But that's pretty much where I live. I don't really post too much and always receptive to voice notes and messages. And always love being able to find time throughout the week to get back and share a little bit of insight and meet some fantastic people.
Mm, awesome. Well, everyone listening that heard that, there's your invitation. Go say hi to Luke
Yeah.
if it's on your heart. Tell him the thought room sent you. And Luke, thank you so much for your
Yeah.
wisdom and your time today. It's been so spontaneous and fun to drop
Yeah.
in with you, and I'm cherishing this blossoming friendship.
Yeah. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for being so open to extending the invite to the thought room. And yeah, excited to see where this all grows to and relationships and conversations.
Yeah, man. Thanks.
Awesome.